Hello, those who are joining. How's audio, video, internet connection, all that? Hello, Kristen. Hello, Ryan. Hello, Metika. Hello, Jay. I'm gonna guess. Is it close to noon your time down there in New Zealand? Hello, Dharma learner. Even Jayantha. As usual, we'll give it a couple of minutes before we get started to allow people to come in. 1 p.m. All right, I was an hour off. Hello, Visaka. Welcome. All right, we'll get started in about a minute. Welcome, Gregory. There we go. Hello, Karuna. All right, let's get started. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Mano pubangama dhamma mano satta mano maya manasache padutena vasativa karotiva tato nang dukkha manveti chakrang va vahato padang mano pubangama dhamma mano satta mano maya manasache pasannena vasativa karotiva tato nang sukha manveti chaya va anapayani anicca vata sankhara upada vayadamino upajitva nirujjanti te samvu pasumo sukho sabba papassa akaranang kusalasa upasampada sachitta pariyodapanang etang buddha nasasanang kanti paramang tapotittika nibbanang paramang vadanti buddha nahi pabbajito parupagati samanohoti parang vetayanto anupavado anupagato patimokke cha sangvaro matanyuta cha batasming pantancha sayanasanang arichitte cha ayogo etang buddhana sasanang. All right, English. All actions are led by the mind. Mind is their master, mind is their maker. Actors speak with a defiled state of mind, then suffering follows, as the cartwheel follows the foot of the ox. All actions are led by the mind. Mind is their master, mind is their maker. Actors speak with a pure state of mind, then happiness follows, as your shadow follows you without departing. Impermanent are all conditioned things, affected by rising and falling away. Having arisen, they then must cease. Blissful is it when they subside. Abstaining from all evil, doing what is good, cleansing one's mind. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. Patience is the highest practice. Nibbana is supreme, say the Buddhas. A mendicant does not harm others, a recluse oppresses no one. Not insulting, not harming, restrained according to the moral code, moderating in food, dwelling in solitude, engaging in higher mental development. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. All right, friends, welcome. It is Monday night, so that means it is time for another festival of Dhamma with the Maggasekha community. It's time for Dhammapalooza. As always, Dhammapalooza is community guided, which means we don't know what Dhammapalooza is going to be like tonight. Right? Whenever I create the stream, I only put Dhammapalooza in the date because who knows what will it be? Will we have lots of questions? Will we have no questions and read suttas? Will people have topics to give so that I give a Dhamma talk? Well, that's all up to you. So in the next couple of minutes in the chat, if you have any questions you'd like me to answer in relation to anything Buddhism, meditation, monasticism, etc., you can put those in the chat. If you have any topics you'd like me to give a talk on or to discuss, you can put those in the chat. If you have any topics you'd like the community to discuss, you can put those in the chat. And while we wait for the next couple of minutes to see if anything comes in the chat, we'll see what comes up. And if nothing comes up, well, we did have a sutta suggestion from last week to read. I forgot who exactly asked it, but to read Majjhima Nikaya number 1, one of the most complicated suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya. So maybe we read that. We'll see. So good evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. Keep an eye on the chat. Also, as always, it's perfectly fine for you to talk to each other in the chat, support each other, give each other links, etc. These kind of things. I always like to foster community. So please feel free to be community in the act communal in the chat. Visakha, as always, votes for the sutta. And she may get her wish, because we'll see. The chat seems quiet tonight. I forgot who it was who requested Majjhima Nikaya 1. Hopefully they show up tonight. All right, we have some things popping up. Good evening, Bante. You mentioned, so this is this morning monastery experience when we were talking about the section of the, I think it's the what is it? The Magga Vibhanga or whatever, the analysis of the path. I think that's what we're going over, where the Buddha says that monks, you should be friends with Sariputta and Moggallana. So I gave a little talk, like I always do at the end of morning monastery experience, just a couple of minutes, discussing the idea of, how I encourage people to find, bhikkhus or bhikkhunis in the suttas that they kind of connect with and to use them as role models. I would say that, yeah, I said that I have similarities to Sariputta in that I'm much more inclined towards, like, for lack of a better word, I think the best word to describe it, even though it's not really in the suttas and it's not exactly accurate, but the best way to describe is I'm much more of a dry vipassana practitioner. I still do sitting meditation and all that kind of stuff, but my inclinations and my practice in terms of ease of use and power have always inclined towards like mindfulness in all activities as opposed to sitting and following my breath for 4 hours. So in that way I say because Sariputta is not a obviously, because the Buddha is quite clear that towards the end you have both. There's no one who just becomes awakened. There's no one who becomes awakened without jhanas, right? So that's to be clear about this. But the Buddha says that we are inclined. Some people are inclined towards like a satipatthana, like a vipassana development of vipassana mind state. Some people are inclined towards samatha. But whatever you're inclined towards, you eventually have both. So that should be made very clear. It's not an either or. If you're on the actual path, you're going to have both eventually. But yeah, that's why I say I kind of incline towards Sariputta in that aspect. In terms of who I really see as like my disciple role model, it's Maggasekha, the grumpy old man of the father of the Sangha. That's who I see as much more kind of like my role model, kind of who I'm, personality wise, I'm like, somebody who would rather be kind of by himself in the woods, but for the good of future generations, doesn't become a hermit in a way, but yeah, I'm much more Maggasekha than any other disciple. And I think that's important. I think because, like I said, the only monastics I fully trust have been Parinibbana 2,600 years ago. Like, there's no living monastic that you can really kind of put your full trust in, because most likely 99% chance they're not awakened. And you can learn from them, but I think there's a bad habit for people to kind of incline, and I think this comes from the desire to kind of give your agency to a monk or a teacher, because you think that, oh, they're a really good teacher, that means it's going to make it easier for me to become awakened, which doesn't exist. That's not reality. Even people who were monks under the Buddha Gautama, they still screwed up and they didn't become awakened. So people who have that mindset are lost in the weeds, unfortunately. But you know, this is I think it's good to have a kind of role model, like a person who you can see like, oh, they did this, right? And I can do it too. So that's what I was saying this morning. You know, if you feel like there's a disciple from the suttas who, you know, kind of fits you, then, you know, that can be your, like, you know, Catholicism, they say like patron saint or whatever. This can be your patron disciple, you know, a role model to emulate. Mahakassapa was all like, you know, monks used to be all good and hardcore and live in the forest, and now they're all lazy. This is not the time of the Buddha. Mahakassapa was already complaining about the degradation of monastics. It's like, what happened? Yeah, that's just the way things go. But anyway, I think that's good for that. Okay, that next one from Gregory. You have often discussed aspects of Vinaya with us. What benefits are there for lay people to learn more about Vinaya, given that the rules do not apply to them? If you are a traditional lay person, if you're part of the Fourfold Assembly, well, the other half of that assembly is monastics. And chances are you're going to be around monastics. You're going to learn from them. You're going to support them. You know, if you're like, I'm just the lay Buddhist or secular Buddhist, I don't care about monastics, then it probably doesn't matter. But if you are around monastics, you should know at least a little bit. There are dangers to that, though, because what happens is there's a lot of nuances and a lot of ways that different communities can interpret the rules differently and live by the rules differently. And you might like have, you know, your main community is like your first community, and you know the rules by your community, and then you go to another community and you're like, oh, they're doing things all wrong here. And well, maybe not. Chances are they could be doing things wrong in the original community you were a part of. You never know. Or it just could be that there's different interpretations. And, you know, there's also different levels. You know, like I've just seen people freak out about a monk. Maybe a monk watches TV or whatever. But then they give monk like a monk money. And I'm like, are you kidding me? The monk watching a TV or whatever entertainment, that's like the lowest of the low class of it's not even a confessable offense. But giving money to a monk, that goes even beyond Vinaya. That's like really bad. The Buddha literally straight up says a bhikkhu who has access to gold and silver does not have the qualities of a bhikkhu. Right? This goes beyond the rules. But so I've just seen kind of lay people freak out over silly things, small rules, or even just cultural rules, and just totally miss the boat on much more serious things. So it should not be seen as you should be very careful about judgment when you study the monastic rules. You really should. I also have to do this because I've had the experience of monks who've been monks almost as long as I've been alive, not knowing rules. And it's just like, holy moly. This is like, oh yeah, Mahakassapa was complaining about monks 2,600 years ago. You know, and so I've kind of had to let go of a lot of my judgment towards a lot of monastics. And I just focus on myself. So be very careful of the judgment I. Um, you should at the very least know the very major rules, like monks shouldn't be sleeping around with people. Monks shouldn't be, encouraging people to kill, um, or killing. Um, monks shouldn't be stealing. All these kind of things. Those are very, very serious rules. You should at least know those, because if you see monks doing that kind of stuff, and you're pretty much assured that there's no different interpretations for that. That's a bit much. Um, yeah. So it's important to understand at least the more serious rules, and also to understand that there are nuances in interpretations. Um, but it's really up to you, like how much if you have if you're not going to become a monastic or anything like that. Like there are monks that have made, like I think on Access to Insight, there's a like Vinaya for lay people. Like there's a monk like 20 years ago made a kind of guide. Um, so there's a couple guides like that. That at least is a kind of like a good start. Ryan wants me to talk about fear. I think that's a good topic. I want to just cover some of the smaller questions before we go into a topic like that, though. I'd like to hear if you or also any lay followers here have seasons of practice, like when you feel like it's time for seclusion, when you practice and study intensely, or when it's time to be part of a community, spend time with your Kalyanamitas, practice more dana, cultivate Brahmi Viharas, etc. I feel spread thin by Vasa and Katina season and felt a strong need for seclusion, but now it's a little sad and dry. So I don't know if I need to cultivate things I have been missing or just weird defilements. Probably could be both. But yes, no. The longer you do this, and the more you have really kind of studied and mastered your practice, you will know intuitively that it's time for certain things. Like I try to like balance out the amount of time I do walking and sitting, but sometimes I can tell that my mind is inclined towards sitting more because my mind wants to go deep. And so I'll walk less and sit more. So this is something you'll notice. It's like you're, what are you, reading the wind, reading the tea leaves, or whatever you want to call it. You're intuiting that your path is calling you to do something. And so usually that's a good sign for you to do it. At least it's been for me anyway. So like if you want to, if you're inclined towards, okay, now I feel like I have to practice more dana, that could be your intuition, the path kind of pointing you towards, you need to focus on this for your further growth, these kind of things. I felt spread and thin by Vasa and Katina season. You're not the only one. That tends to be how it goes. Huh? Dharma learner, what? Oh, okay, okay. I was like, you consider me a patron. All right. That's an interesting way of putting it. You know, I guess because of my love of Roman history and Latin and everything, like I know what a patron means, like in ancient Rome. It's like how am I a patron? That's interesting. But yeah. Well, the Buddha himself says not to trust him. Don't just trust the Buddha. Question the Buddha. When you hear something, even from the Buddha, you don't just automatically accept or deny it. You investigate it. Right? That's how you should practice. Just because some big famous monk is, oh, everybody says, oh, this is an awakened monk. They're really good, yada, 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 yada. Okay, well, you listen to them. And then you investigate it. You don't just automatically accept it or reject it. You investigate it. Put it into practice. See if the monk is right. And for me personally, in the modern era, that's been Ajahn Chah for me. Ajahn Chah is just batting 1,000. Of course, he's also gone too, so he can't disappoint me. I only know him since he's been gone. I mean, I was in high school when he actually passed, but I wasn't a Buddhist then. But so yeah, Karuna, what I would say is, for I you'd probably be good to follow your intuition in the practice. I know you've been practicing for quite a while. So if you're inclined towards doing something, probably do it. All right. So back to Ryan. I'm new to Buddhism, so anything is good for me. Well, when you're new, there's a lot to cover, but you can't do it all in a short time. You have to kind of gradually have it seep in and practice. So when you're good, when you're new, it's good to hear lots of Dhamma talks and read suttas and then practice. But fear. So fear is one of our mind states that is a that's a survival mechanism, right? There are there are people today, like people who are born who can't feel pain or don't have any fear. They don't tend to live long lives because they don't have those inhibitors, right? If our ancestors didn't have fear, well, we wouldn't be here. They died off. They would have died off. The ones that had no fear. Um, so fear can be something skillful and it can be something unskillful. But like any kind of strong mind state, strong emotion, the important thing is to not act out of fear, to not act out of anger, to not act out of lust. The fear, the anger, might be pointing us towards something that we might need to address. Or it could be just totally made up. It could be just totally wrong perception. So that's why it's important to always question, always investigate our fear, investigate, these strong emotional states, because our perception is not always right. Chances are actually the perception's wrong, but we don't know if it's right or wrong until we investigate it. And we need to apply mindfulness to that. If we act out of fear and anger and lust and different strong emotional states, the Buddha equates this to like there's a pot of water and you're trying to see your reflection in the water, but you can't, because there's a variety of different conditions that are stopping you from doing that. Like, for instance, with anger, it's boiling water. With doubt or with other things, it's like moss or something. There's something that is making your ability to understand things not clear. And so the Buddha says, when you're in these states, you don't know what is good for you, you don't know what is good for others, and you don't know what is good for both. The only way to even attempt to do that is to investigate your situation with mindfulness. Is this fear justified? Somebody has a fear that at any second a meteorite is going to come and plow through their head and they're going to just drop dead. I mean, is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. It's happened. But the probabilities are pretty extreme for something like that to happen. Or we have fears about dying in a plane crash, where we're exponentially more likely to die on the ride to work. Right? But because we're just so used to driving, it's become a normal automatic thing. We don't think about the fact that there's a pretty high chance that we could die driving to work or driving to wherever. So it's important to, we're never, when it comes to things that are arising in your experience, we are never repressing or suppressing anything that's arising. The only time we would do something like that is if it's going to cause us to do something really unskillful. Like if we have strong lust and we're about to like rape somebody or kill somebody or something like that. That's the only time where we're really trying to like using as much willpower and as ability as possible to avoid from doing something really bad. But other than that, something just simply arises in the mind. We're not trying to ignore it, push it away, or suppress it, repress it. We acknowledge 100% that it is there. That's another issue. Sweeping it under the rug. Oh, it's not really there. It's not. No, it's there. We have to understand and we have to acknowledge this is in the mind, this is arising. And then you reflect, well, if I act out of this, fear that is arising, will this lead to my benefit and the benefit of others, or will it lead to my harm and the harm of others? Is this fear legitimate? It might be. It definitely might be. Especially somebody who's new to Buddhism and they start practicing like mindfulness of death practices. And then They're finally, their first time in their life reflecting on the fact that they could die, their family could die, their children, their spouse, their parents, their siblings, whatever, they can die. And that's like a really, I don't want to say traumatic, but that's like a really in the beginning, because like, oh my God, like, no, this is actually true. And that's because we've ignored and avoided that our whole lives. And so when we're facing the truth, it's not easy. It's hard. But the Buddha encourages us to be courageous, forthright, zealous in investigating things as they are, in understanding the nature of reality, and facing the truth. So when fear arises, first thing is we question it. Is this legitimate or not? If it's legitimate, well, maybe it's pointing towards some kind of action that we need to do. Maybe you're fat and you eat horrible food, and maybe you get a blood test and your blood sugar is a little high, but you're not quite diabetic yet, and you start to get fearful. Oh, I might, become diabetic. I might have to get my leg cut off, and all these possible things arise. And that stuff is possible, yeah. But you could also view it as, well, why don't I kind of funnel this fear of the possible reality into acting in a different way, acting more skillfully? Why do I, if this is a legitimate fear, how do I act? What is the most skillful thing to do? And sometimes the most skillful thing is an actual action, and sometimes the most skillful thing is letting go. Saying, well, I can't do anything about this. Yep, I could be at Starbucks and somebody comes in with a gun and shoots me. Not much I can do to protect against that. And some might say, well, I have my own gun and I got training and yada, 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 all kinds of stuff like that. And hey, that might be legitimate, but it also might not save you. Who knows? So it's important to investigate your fears, to really know them, to really kind of really understand what fear is. I did this even before I was a Buddhist. In my earlier days, in my 20s, and even a good chunk of my 30s, I was like a wannabe survivalist. I want to learn how to survival skills, bushman skills, things like that, surviving in the wilderness. And as part of that, I started like camping in spots by myself. Like most of the time, at least in voice shout, there was somebody. But if something happened, I wouldn't have been able to get to them or them to me. If like an animal wanted to kill me or something like that. So it was far enough but close enough. And so I would like have a tent and my own little fire, and I have my handgun with me, in my holster. And I'd just be in the darkness, just by myself with the fire, and I'd go in my tent. And then I gradually moved to not having a tent, but just a lean-to, meaning that it covers in case there's rain, but the sides are wide open. If anything wanted to, they could just come right in, just grab me and take me. And so I just kind of like observe the fear. Watch the fear. what is fear like? And then gradually I was like, okay, I don't need a fire. And then as I was really hitting my stride in Buddhism, it was, I don't need a gun. I just have metta. So it's just me in the pitch black. I can remember, like, okay, I'm lying down to go to sleep and my eyes are open and I don't see anything because there's a tree canopy. It's just pitch black. And what happens when you don't know, when there's uncertainty, when you don't see clearly, your mind fills in all kinds of things. Not even just bears and jackals and wolves or whatever, or maybe even like vampires and Bigfoots and aliens, all kinds of things that may or may not even, be a reality. But your mind and shadow people and things like this, your mind fills in the uncertainty with all kinds of possibilities through the fear. And I think, and all the times I did that, I think only one time was I cognizant of something being right next to me. I'm pretty sure it was a coy dog. A coy dog is like kind of like a wild cross between like a dog and a coyote. It's like, because at one time later, when I would do this, there was there was a pack of coy dogs one time, and they made this sound, and I was like, okay, this is a little wild. And Bob, my brother-in-law, this is my brother-in-law from when I was married when I was younger, Bob and Lisa, and Bob's like, Joe, I think you should camp with us tonight. And I'm like, no, I want to, no, I should stay out. I'm doing my training and this and this and this and this. And then it turned out like, I did say, okay, I'm going to listen to Bob because I trust Bob. Bob is like an older brother to me. So I said, okay, I'm going to trust Bob. And then we heard them throughout the night, and then I just saw signs where like the next day I was like, I'm pretty happy that I didn't just spend the night, who knows. But anyway, this is just to kind of show you like my progression and dealing with fear. And then, when I found Bob in a society where I ordained, I would, I visited there also for 3 years before I ordained there. But I would meditate up the mountain in the darkness, just way out up in the mountain. They'd have these like little platforms. And I can remember just meditating, being in this mountain surrounded, and just like watching the fear and giving myself lots of metta. I learned that when I was like meditating, when I finally gave up my gun, I was like, the only weapon I have now is metta. And so I would just, give lots of metta out to everybody in the, all the beings in the environment, whatever beings might, be harmful to me, things like that. I just powered my metta out to everybody in the forest, everything, everybody, whatever beings there were in the forest. And you'd be really surprised the power of somebody who has lots of metta and how that impacts people around them. But it also calms your mind. So like I would practice lots and lots of metta until my mind was calm enough and I'd fall asleep. But to move forward to when I was on the platform, and this is another good lesson I had in fear. And the platform in the woods, meditating, and I hear noise, the leaves, and it sounds like it's a jaguar or something. It sounds like it's a puma, something that's coming up. And I look, and it's a squirrel. And after years and years of being in the woods, I just realized a lot of time, like, the sounds are really amplified. And then one time I was meditating, and I heard a noise, and I know, okay, this is definitely not a squirrel. I got afraid, and I looked, and it was like a baby deer, and I scared it. It went like, and it just like booked out. And I was like, oh, like wait a second, like I'm the scariest thing in this forest. So it's kind of like made me realize, that I can't necessarily trust my fear. The fear is messing with my perceptions. It's clouding my mind. And so I can't act mindfully and skillfully with fear. Just it doesn't work. And because I did all these investigations, I actually really know what mind feels like, both in the body and in the mind. Sometimes I can tell I'm actually experiencing some level of fear by what I feel in my body before I recognize it in my mind. Like goosebumps and chills up the spine and all that. That's all real. Like that's literally signs of fear. Like body reaction to fear. So you can observe that. And so just so when you can see, when you've mastered that, or maybe not master, but adept, maybe you've gained some level of mastery over it. Well, then you recognize, oh, I'm fearful. Why am I afraid? What's going on? And you start to understand at the more deeper and subtle levels of fear. Even like fear of doing even mundane things. Your boss says, I need to see you at 1:00 in my office. Oh no, what did I do? Did I do that thing right? Did I do this thing wrong? Did I do this? And then you go to the boss and it's like a mundane thing. It's like totally, you're like, my mind filled all these possibilities, but none of those were actually reality. None of those actually came true. Like most of the things, the overwhelming, like 99 or 95% of the things that we fear or we're worried about never actually end up happening. And so the best thing to do is to develop our mindfulness so that we face each situation with as much mental clarity as possible so we can act as skillfully as possible. And so that fear becomes a useful sign or a useful tool as opposed to an overwhelming experience. Oh, chat's quiet. Good grief, Bante, you're courageous. Not really. I mean, anybody can be courageous when they slowly dip their toes in the pool. You just slowly, gradually do it. Slowly get used to it. When you spend the first night out in the woods and you're still alive the next morning, you're like, oh, okay, that wasn't so bad. Then you spent your 10th night and your 20th night and you're still alive and nothing bad happened. You're like, oh, wait a second. You're around animals and you realize like they don't want to have anything to do with you. They're more afraid of you. And you're like, oh, okay. You're starting to understand nature more. You're starting to understand the cloudiness is being replaced with wisdom. And so it's not about being courageous. You got to start out, slow and then build up. Cognitive behavioral therapy. All right. 7:51. I don't know that I want to start such a big sutta. Greg, it would be nice to observe posted days as a group. We actually used to do that on the Discord. I used to host a session every full and new moon. Give like a little Dhamma talk. We'd discuss. Actually, what we would do is we'd cycle through the Noble Eightfold Path, and we would I would give like a little kind of introduction, and then we would have just like a community discussion, like how are we living this part of the path and our struggles and successes and things like that. Just kind of got out of it. I think what killed it was me going on one of my long trips or something like that, and then I got out of the habit, and then the community kind of got slow and not as populated, and so it just never happened again. But I think that is a good thing to do. Wish you health in this chilly weather, Bante. Thanks. Yeah. I did something I shouldn't have done. But when I was just I did the live stream before here, and I didn't want to wear my hat when I was with other monks, and my head was quite cold, and so it kind of triggered. That tends to be what happens. When I have my bald head and there's a little bit of a chill, it triggers histamine reactions and coughings and things like that. But in general, I'm quite healthy. I'm doing well. Mostly. Hello, Jose. Welcome. All right. Well, we probably could I'll give it another minute to see if any questions pop up, and then maybe it's a good time to do our meditation. Today it was 70 at where I'm at. Yeah, it was 70 with me too, or close to it. Yeah. And this is kind of like this room is like an outdoors thing. It's only heated by a little heater, so which I don't have on. So it got too cold for my head. All right. I think we're good. We can do our meditation now. Set your body up in whatever comfortable and stable position works for you. Whether that's sitting on a cushion, a chair. We'll spend a little time doing a mindful scan of the body, starting from the feet and moving up to the head. Start by placing our focus on the feet. By placing focus, this means to focus in and pay close mindful attention to any feeling or sensation arising in that part of the body, such as the feeling of the feet pressing against the floor, the cushion, the opposite leg, etc. Move up through the ankles into the calves. Through the knees and into the thighs. What's the feeling of the thighs pressing against the cushion or the chair? Up through to the hips and pelvis, paying very close attention to the position of the pelvis, the angle, how it impacts both the lower body and the spine as we start to move upwards. When you're ready, move up the spine through the abdomen and the chest. Checking that the spine is not leaning or slouching, nor that you're trying to make it straight. Both of these will cause discomfort and pain over time. Ideally, your spine should be resting comfortably in its neutral position with its natural curve. Up through to the shoulders, checking they're hanging loosely, not scrunched up and tight. Down through to the elbows and hands, observing how their position also impacts your posture. And finally up to the head, checking that the head is not leaning and slouching, chin parallel to the floor. When you're done setting up your body in a comfortable and stable position, let the body go and take 3 deep breaths. And then let the breath go. From here on in, try not to manipulate or control the breath in any way. Your body has been breathing from the moment you were born. Will continue to do so until the second you die. Doesn't need you to do its job. Your job is to simply observe, investigate, and abide with the breath. As the body breathes in, the body breathes out. You may find most prominent the feeling of the air coming in and out of the nostrils. You can place your focus there. Or if that's a bit too hard, the breath too subtle to follow, you may find most prominent the rise and fall of the chest. You can place your focus there. Or you can simply abide with the basic understanding that this body is breathing in and breathing out. Friends, we come to this meditation with many responsibilities, worries, and burdens, family and friends, work and school, concerns about the world, the society, many things that will seek to come to our mind as we follow the breath. For the time of this meditation, we practice laying down our burdens. Just as the mighty Atlas from Greek mythology holds the world on his shoulders, so too do we each hold our world on our shoulders, a heavy burden. Lay your world down and follow the breath. As you're following your breath, your mind will become bored, seek to run away to the past or the future, across the world, into various stories and fantasies. Or an external distraction like a sound will arise, will agitate your mind, and your mind will chase after it like a barking dog. When this happens, after a time, it will slowly start to dawn on you that you have been taken away from the breath. At that point, fully acknowledge that you've been taken away from the breath. Practice letting go of the distraction if it's still there by neither getting agitated and trying to push it away, nor by continuing to hold on to it and be attached to it. Try to do your best to let it go, to let it be, to give it no effort, energy, or attention. If you're able to let it go, it will go just as it came. It arose and then it will cease. And return to the breath. So whenever you're distracted away, acknowledge, let go, and return over and over. If you get distracted away from the breath, you didn't fail. You're not a bad meditator. There's no need to get too wrapped up in judgment. This is simply the mind showing you how it works, showing you its craving. Just like a child who's learning to ride a bike gets back on after they fall, just simply come back to the breath when you're distracted away. Always come back. Acknowledge, let go, and return. Always come back to the breath. The breath is always there doing its job, ready for you to come follow it towards a more calm and tranquil mind. Slowly start to open your eyes, becoming aware of the room around you, your body's position in it. Reflecting on the state of your mind before the meditation and now. And contemplating any experiences that stood out. And while you do that, I'll bring up the Dhammapada. We'll read some Dhammapada verses, and then we'll do final business, sharing merits, and call it a night, or day, or morning, wherever you are. So the Dhammapada, for those of you who may not know, is probably the most famous little book of Buddhism, at least outside of Buddhist world. It has basically a collection of verses from all the different scriptures, the suttas. So we'll read through this one. We might be at the end. No, there might be one or two more. So we are in the miscellaneous chapter. If by renouncing a lesser happiness, one may realize a greater happiness, let the wise man renounce the lesser, having regard for the greater. Entangled by the bonds of hate, he who seeks his own happiness by inflicting pain on others is never delivered from hatred. The cankers only increase for those who are arrogant and heedless, who leave undone what should be done and do what should not be done. The cankers cease for those mindful and clearly comprehending ones, who always earnestly practice mindfulness of the body, who do not resort to what should not be done, and steadfastly pursue what should be done. Having slain mother, craving, having slain father, self-conceit, two warrior kings, eternalism and nihilism, and destroyed a country, sense organs and sense objects, together with its treasurer, attachment and lust. Ungrieving goes the holy man. Having slain mother, father, two Brahmin kings, and a tiger as the fifth, the five mental hindrances, ungrieving goes the holy man. Those disciples of Gautama, that's Buddha, those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, who by day and night constantly practice recollection of the qualities of the Buddha. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, who by day and night constantly practice recollection of the qualities of the Dhamma. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, who by day and night constantly practice the recollection of the qualities of the Sangha. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, who by day and night constantly practice mindfulness of the body. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, whose minds by day and night delight in the practice of nonviolence. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, whose minds by day and night delight in the practice of meditation. Difficult is the life of a monk. Difficult is it to delight therein. Also difficult and sorrowful is the household life. Suffering comes from association with unequals, Suffering comes from wandering in samsara. Therefore, be not an aimless wanderer. Be not a pursuer of suffering. He who is full of faith and virtue and possesses good repute and wealth, he is respected everywhere in whatever land he travels. The good shine from afar like the Himalayas, for those who know it by that. But the wicked are unseen like arrows shot in the night. He who sits alone, sleeps alone, and walks alone, who is strenuous and subdues himself alone, will find delight in the solitude of the forest. Ryan says there's a lot to learn. How does one not get overwhelmed? Just take it slowly. Thank you. Yes, take it slowly and just listen. Right? Don't try to understand everything. Just imbibe it. Just let it come in. And naturally over time, your mind will incline towards wanting to learn more about specific things. In the beginning, just let it all seep in. Just listen more and more and more and more to Dhamma talks by good teachers and things like that. Let the Dhamma seep in and eventually read some suttas and then and do meditation and practice. And over time, you will slowly start to understand and it will slowly become more ordered. But in the beginning, there's a lot. So don't try to understand it all. Just listen. Listen and imbibe it. All right, friends. Well, I think we are good. So let's do our business and then we'll do sharing of merits. So for those of you joining for the first time, either watching live or who will be watching later on, if you are interested in learning more about more activities that I do in the organization Maggasekha, which I'm building, then you can go to the website listed on the screen, maggasekha.org, maggasekha.org. There you will find every time I have a new YouTube video, live stream, article, retreat. In 2 weeks, we have a Zoom retreat coming up. Every time that there is some event or even my travels, I'm a nomad these days. I don't live in any one place, so I'm traveling every month, every other month, etc. So all of that information you can find on the website. That is my headquarters. So what you can do on the website, if you like, is put your email in the top right, and then anytime I post something new, you will get an email notification. Same thing with the YouTube channel. If you like, you can subscribe, click the bell, all that jazz, and then every time a new video or a new live stream comes out, you will be notified by email. We also have our Maggasekha online community, which is on the program called Discord. We've been going for 8 years now. We read the suttas together and meditate together, and lay people discuss together all kinds of communal activities on the Maggasekha Discord. And we are a community that is based both in study and practice in the early Buddhist texts, the suttas. So if this sounds like a community that may be interesting to you, you're welcome to send an email to the email listed on the screen, maggasekha@gmail.com. And then you can ask for an invite and we will send you a link. So just to quickly go over the various activities that I do during the week. So obviously Mondays at 7 p.m. New York time, that's GMT -5 or UTC -5, either one. we have Dhammapalooza, which we're just finishing it now, 7 p.m. New York time. Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. New York time, we do a half hour of what's called Morning Monastery Experience. This is exactly what the title says. This is the experience of if you were staying at a monastery after or before morning meditation. There's usually some little puja, there's some precepts, chanting, a little Dhamma thought of the day. So it's you can start your day with a little Dhamma talk and listening and chanting some Dhamma. So this is Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. New York time. So in just about 11 and a half hours, I will be back live streaming once again. So that's Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Also, Saturdays on Insight Timer. If you have the Insight Timer program, I am a teacher on there. Saturdays at 3 p.m. New York time for an hour and a half, we do meditation, Dhamma talk, and Q&A. And then Sunday nights on the Discord at 7 p.m., the community comes together to read suttas. This is a good time. There's multiple monastics, usually myself, Dhamma, sometimes Venerable Pasana, come together with the community, the Fourfold Assembly communes, and read suttas together. So that's we've been doing that for 8 years. So this is a wonderful activity as well. Ryan, since you are on the Discord now, that is something that I highly suggest coming to, if you can. Sundays at 7 p.m. New York time. All right, friends. So let's do our sharing of merit and then call it a night. Dukkha patta chane dukkha, bhaya patta chane bhaya, sokha patta chane sokha, hantu sabbe pipaniyo, etavata cha mehi sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya, akasatta chabumatta deva naga mahitika, punyang tang anumoditva charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit of ours that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share in this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, friends, that is the end of another Dhammapalooza. Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy and at ease. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again, which could be tomorrow for a morning monastery experience, or if I'm still around in a week, maybe next week for another Dhammapalooza. Have a good week.